Stand by. Well, we still have a little bit of nasty weather left up in northern New England, where they're dealing with some areas of heavy rain and some flash flooding, but that rain will be tapering off as calmer weather takes over for the next 24 to 36 hours or so. In the eastern part of the United States, we still have a lot of hot weather across the coastal deep south back into Texas. Otherwise, everybody else is in August 8th, 2023 mode tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Make sure you get the truck and load it up with all the topsoil, sand, and mulch you need. Of course, in the wintertime, it's all about salt. And with hurricane season getting ready to go into peak time, just make sure you've got all the necessary things that you need just in case we get a tropical storm. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by WeatherFlow. Good idea to have your own weather station. It's easy to assemble, very easy to assemble. Just put it outside and then use your mobile device to check out the weather in your location, and it'll keep a history until the day of your demise. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video, and should you make a purchase of this or anything else on the Tempest WeatherFlow website, use the coupon code I want a weather station. And if you do, you get
10% off.
Did you
on WeatherFlow, on Tempest, almost anything you get from Tempest. What a deal. What a deal.
You like that, voice inflection there, a little, very Academy of Dramatic Arts kind of approach. So anyway, it's Tuesday, and after yesterday with all the severe weather, it's a much calmer day. I don't think I got above 75 today here. We had clouds. The sun came out for a brief time around midday, but we've had a lot of clouds, mid and high clouds, all day long. A nice breeze. It was actually one of the better August days that you could have here in northeast Georgia. Didn't rain either. It was just a cloudy type of day.
I don't have the high temperature, and I'm sure that Mrs. Rayo will now get up and walk over to, and I don't have a Tempest weather station, I'm sorry, but WeatherFlow Tempest. But we do have a weather station that does give the high temperature, and he will now check. I just heard her move from the kitchen upstairs to where the weather station is, and I'm sure that she'll either type the high temperature on the chat board, or maybe she'll even announce it on the intercom or whatever. But it didn't get very warm out there. Still rather a bit on the humid side, but the humidity has...
High 78 degrees and currently 70.
Did you hear that?
I heard it. The high was 70 degrees. That's
78.
78?
The high was 78 out here today. And currently it's 70 degrees. So there you are.
Well, that wasn't too shabby. You were,
Still a little too humid for me, but the humidity is going to come down, or at least the dew point temperatures will come down a bit between now and this time tomorrow. And it'll also be a warmer day tomorrow. I think we'll probably see temperatures, Joe, at least in the lower 80s. So, and we should have a fair amount of sunshine. So it should be a very nice day. I have heard some forecasters say tomorrow will be the pick of the week. I'm sorry to disagree. I think that the pick of the week this week will be Friday. I think we'll see humidities or dew points a bit lower than what we'll see tomorrow, and it will also be warm, and we'll also have a lot of sunshine. So, I mean,
tomorrow won't be shabby.
Take your pick.
The thing with tomorrow is you're going to have a west wind, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some areas right along the immediate coast, like Long Island and coastal New Jersey. If you're headed to the beach, it could get well up into the 80s right along the shore.
It could, with a vigorous enough westerly wind, it certainly could do that. But I think overall, in the overview of things, sky condition, dew point, temperatures, I think the day that should be the pick of the week will be Friday. But again, as you just mentioned a few seconds ago, tomorrow won't be all that shabby either.
Nope. And I was looking at the longer range. I'm not sure yet, but it does kind of look like early next week we might have another one of those vigorous cold fronts with a, a decent short wave that'll be swinging into the eastern part of the United States. I'm not 100% sure on the timing of it, but I thought that there might be. Usually these things aren't just one-offs. You wind up getting at least two of them within a short period of time, and sometimes you get three. So it wouldn't be a shocker to me if we wound up having another day where we have a lot of severe weather to talk about.
I agree. I'm looking here on my my own forecast page on Facebook, and I said sun giving way to late clouds on Monday. There could be some showers Monday night into early Tuesday, and so there.
Yeah, it looked like another one of these warm front, cold front things. And I guess it depends on, if a lot, we saw what happened the other night. If you were after 7 o'clock, a lot of those storms started to weaken, so that by the time they reached the coast, there was hardly much, left to them. So you get a front that comes through, and it comes through too late in the evening. If you're in inland New Jersey, if you're in eastern Pennsylvania in particular, you could wind up getting hammered. But then, it's already dark by the time these storms get to the coast. So unless you have a really, really strong short wave that extends pretty far to the south, you're likely to see those storms weaken. So we'll have to just figure out the timing. I was just sort of speculating in my own silly little way.
Yeah.
Anyhow, welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. I know there's a lot of you that lurk in the background, and you're shy, but we invite you to join the conversation on the chat board. We don't bite, neither do the folks on the chat board. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. Turn your notifications on, because we're on Monday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Sundays we're on at 11 in the mornings. We have a nice Sunday morning show. And Fridays and Saturdays, usually Joe and I take those 2 days off. But if there's a storm going on, a storm system going on, particularly if it's a hurricane or a tropical storm, or it's in the winter months and we've got something that's coming for, say the weekend, Joe and I will add an extra show or two. We've been known to do that. We're also
it's in our contract.
It is,
it's in our
yes.
contract that we have to do that.
Yes. So. Exactly. And we will not have a show this Thursday. Okay.
Well.
Oh, we are? I thought you had something to do.
I know. Well, yeah. The local German club has a thing where they sponsored a service dog. These are wonderful animals that provide, indeed, help for people who cannot get around. And they're going to honor the service dog that is recognized by the German club on Thursday. I don't know what the name of the ballpark is. We've been there once before. It's where the
Rockland Boulders play?
No. Rockland Boulders are different. These are the Renegades,
the
Hudson Valley Renegades. And so we're representing, Bernard and I will be up there and representing the German club. However, if you have seen the forecast for Thursday, I'm now beginning to question whether or not it would be worthwhile to go, because it appears to me, at least, Joe, that in the afternoon and into the early evening, maybe there might very well be some significant showering
All right,
rain.
so never mind. I take it back. Maybe we will have a show. And then again,
here's the thing. I'm saying that it probably would not be worthwhile to go. However, one of the directors of the German club, aka Mrs. Rayo, says, well, we could still go and be there for maybe an hour or so. And I'm saying, so you want to go in wet, humid weather, and they're not certain yet whether or not it's going to end in time and whether or not there'll even be a ball game or whatever like that. So it's still up in the air. But if they right now still count on
Okay,
no show Thursday.
I take it back. We'll have a show. Hey, do the Gas House Gorillas play at that stadium?
I believe that the team that played the Renegades, I believe, are a farm club of the Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, okay.
The Tampa Bay Rays farm club is the Renegades, and they play up at this ballpark to our north. I don't even know the name of the town. Maybe it's Beacon or whatever. But
Patrick Darcy
I
says,
don't know if the Gas House Gorillas. I don't know if the Gas House Gorillas are going to be playing. I hope they will, because I'd love to see that conga line.
Yeah. Patrick Darcy says Wappingers Falls.
Wappingers Fall. Okay.
That's what he says.
All right.
Okay. All right. Let's get going here. We've got some weather going on tonight, and we're going to take a look at the watches and warnings. We spoke about this last night with regards to Vermont and also northern New England, and you can see the dark greens that are up there. Those are all flood watches, and earlier today there were a number of flash flood warnings that were up in some of the counties in Maine. Excuse me, right along the immediate coast. In the deep south, I mean the deep south, because it's really the southernmost parts of Georgia and South Carolina, with heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. That dark red you see in South Florida is an excessive heat watch. Okay, so normally it's just hot in Florida. Now they're watching it. Okay, but the whole state is either under a heat advisory or excessive heat warnings. The excessive heat warnings are more to the north, and of course we have them in southeast Louisiana and through much of the state of Texas except the northwest. We have a working severe thunderstorm watch that is up in parts of western Nebraska and northwest Kansas, with a few flood warnings there, and also in northeastern flood watches, I should say, and also the same for northeastern Colorado. Some air quality issues in the northern half of Minnesota, and some red flag warnings in southern Utah, parts of southern Colorado, and northern Arizona. And on the map you could see Hawaii in the purple there, that's all gale warnings, and in the yellows on all the islands, high wind warnings as major Hurricane Dora that passes almost 500 miles south of the Big Island, even as we speak, with as a major hurricane. And we'll take a look at that in just a little bit. But meanwhile, in the Northeast, we still have the old cold front from yesterday. Joe, it's still running across northern Vermont and New Hampshire. There's a low analyzed just north of Boston with a trailing cold front down to Nantucket. And during this morning, there were all sorts of severe thunderstorm warnings that were up for southeastern Massachusetts. In the meantime, behind it, clouds were an issue today in a lot of areas. There was some sun that broke through from place to place, especially the further south you went, central and south Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, down into Virginia. So those areas managed to get up into the 80s, but where clouds were an issue, kept the temperatures from getting much out of the 70s. This thing's just crawling along, but it does get out of the way. And I'm looking to the west. I mean, the dew points are not really all especially low. When you look out west in the Ohio Valley, in northern Ohio Valley, and back through the Great Lakes, they're mostly in the low and middle 60s. There's some upper 50s, mid 50s dew points when you get way up into Wisconsin. But you got to go a long ways away to get to that. Meanwhile, further south, that front cuts across Georgia. So south of that front today, it was very hot. 5 o'clock temperatures mostly in the middle 90s. And you get into southwestern Louisiana. It's a lot of spots down southwest Louisiana, particularly Lake Charles, have had an absolutely brutal summer, Joe. Another day with temperatures over 100 degrees, and of course a slew of 100-degree plus highs away from the coast, the Gulf Coast. Not that far away from the Gulf Coast, but it's just scorching hot through much of the state of Texas. And the Southwest, it's just not. I guess the media got bored if the 110 plus high streak must have been broken, so they're not. I haven't seen too much anymore talking about the big heat in southern Arizona. But most highs there are like generally between 102 and 107.
Yeah, it's continues to be tough. Yeah, it's a matter of a few degrees. Although man is such a and woman too can acclimate very quickly. So by now, those who have spent much of the summer out in Arizona, New Mexico, or southern Utah, and portions of Nevada, I mean, you're used to this by now. And in fact, I would suspect that if the temperature, quote, only, unquote, got to around 100 or 102, you probably would think of that as a cool down compared to what you've been dealt so far this summer season with the extremes that we've heard about already.
Yep, we got a low in southeastern Colorado with a stationary boundary that goes across the Oklahoma Panhandle, and there's a low that's being analyzed in northeastern Kansas. So we were talking about there's some severe weather issues going on there in parts of western Nebraska and parts of Kansas as well. Temperature's not all that particularly hot up here. It's mostly actually upper 70s and low 80s in most places, and it cools off a little bit more when you get on the Canada side with highs just in the 60s. So won't be too long before some of those cooler Canadian air masses start to make their way southward. Here's the latest satellite loop, and there's not a whole, there's a few lightning strikes going on at the moment in parts of northeastern Vermont and into New Hampshire. So there are a couple of heavier thunderstorms that are in the mix there, but the back edge of the clouds starting to pull away to the northeast. So the rains in New England should be coming to an end during the overnight sometime. We've got some big storms in southeast Georgia at the moment. You can see all the clouds I was in today, which kept my temperatures pretty much in check. And you can see the showers and thunderstorms that are developing right now in some of the severe weather areas back through Nebraska and into northwest Kansas. We can check out the radar. Yeah, look, you just looking at up here, you got Vermont does not need, especially central and northern Vermont, do not need to be having this right now. I mean, they just.
No.
They're getting, there's some heavy downpours there. There's a couple of thunderstorms in the mix. It's kind of patchy from upstate New York through New England, being where the low is. This is not a big surprise, but there's nothing when you go further south from there, which is a plus.
It is. It is. In fact, I mentioned last night about the Stellarphane convention, which is really kind of like a Woodstock with telescopes, and it looks like where that is at Springfield, Vermont. Springfield is more south central, not north central Vermont. So it looks like the worst of the weather these recent days have been occurring just to the north of the Stellarphane campsite. I'm hoping that we don't have any difficulties when we go up there ourselves later next week.
A few showers moving across central Illinois and central Indiana. A couple of thunderstorms in there. We've got a bunch of severe thunderstorms warnings up in southeast Georgia as this area heads eastward. Northern Georgia is out of it. Atlanta is out of it. And here we go out in the west. You can see there's you got a few severe thunderstorm warnings up in the west central plains, and also actually fairly numerous showers across New Mexico into southeast Arizona. A couple of thunderstorms around Tucson right now, and also seeing some scattered showers up in parts of Wyoming and Montana and the west. Little patch of showers there. San Diego's got some showers just to their west, believe it or not. And
That's weird.
And they're moving northeastward, so they must have come in from off the Pacific. The Storm Prediction Center, your slight risk areas are in playing out in southeast Georgia now with those big storms. That extended west into Mississippi. There's not a whole lot going on to the west of there. You can see the slight to enhanced risk in the western plains and the marginal risk up in northern Minnesota and North Dakota. The western plains risk area comes with 2 to 5% tornado risk. Tomorrow we have an enhanced risk in northeast Arkansas, southeast Missouri, the western half of Tennessee, and southwestern Kentucky, with a larger area of marginal risk that goes far east as the southern Appalachians, as far north as almost but not quite to Chicago, and west back into eastern Kansas and eastern Oklahoma. And that also in that slight to enhanced risk area, a 2 to 5% tornado risk there, and a 15 to 30% risk that there could be some just strong winds of 50 miles and 50 knots or more. And for Thursday into Friday, general thunderstorms in the east, a marginal risk from southern Virginia down into northern and central Georgia and northern Alabama, over back into south and North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. Also in the eastern halves of North and South Dakota, westernmost Minnesota, a small portion of northeast Nebraska, and northwestern Iowa. So I don't think they had anything on the long range. So I'm not even going to pull the map up and look at the moderate risk for flash flooding in New England there, particularly in Maine, with slight risk around that. Again, most of it should be over with tomorrow. Slight risk matches up with that severe weather risk that we showed you for the lower Ohio and parts of the Tennessee Valley. And for the next day, and this is for Thursday into Friday, they've got a marginal risk, Joe, from Maine down to northern Virginia, then down the Appalachians to me, where I'm in a slight risk, 15 to 40% chance that I could see some flash flooding.
Well, marginal risk is not all that bad. What is that? Marginal is about
5 to 15.
5 to 15. So, I would be concerned. I start being concerned with slight. And of course, what do they see just, today in Vermont? They had like moderate risk. So, you start getting up on the I think when we start getting concerned about tropical cyclones and that tropical moisture getting involved, that's when we'll start seeing more of the higher levels of flood potential. But right now, it's, if you get a thunderstorm, let's say on Thursday, there's a chance that there could be enough to cause localized flooding concerns, but it's not going to be a widespread type deal. And it's not going to be something that's going to last for a very long interval of time.
Well, I don't want that slight risk for me Thursday because my shed is being installed on Thursday. So I don't want rain on Thursday because I want them to put my shed up without any issues.
Holy shed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tough shed.
Oh, okay. Is it like a Tonka truck?
I don't know. I know it comes in pieces and then they install it. They put it together. I got it at Home Depot.
What's the term for that? A house that comes
prefabricated?
Prefabricated,
yeah. Prefabricated, yes.
Yeah.
They probably have some new name for it, but that's what they used to call it anyway. And rainfall amounts in the Northeast. Now some of this is for tonight up in northern New England where they have the 1.5 inches plus. So it's a little front end loaded there. 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch further south, so that comes with the next couple of weather systems that we'll have to deal with. And then, of course, you have more impressive rains of 1.5 inches to some places 2 to 3 inches in parts of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley into northern Georgia. And, of course, being that these are usually convective situations, local areas could easily see double what is forecast. So why don't we just take a look at the upper air, shall we?
Surely.
Yes. Let's take a look at the upper air. This is going to be, let's look at the 18Z run. See what that has to say. So, we of course have been, almost endlessly dealing with these shortwave troughs coming down in the flow from Canada, thanks to the blocking that's up in the North Atlantic. We have, actually, one is exiting today and moving into New Brunswick by the time we get to tomorrow morning. And then you can see there's another upper low near Lake Winnipeg that moves southeastward and swings eastward. And this is going to be the weather system for Thursday. This is actually not a half bad looking shortwave, Joe, that's swinging around with a little cutoff low. I just think that maybe, unlike what we saw the other day, what we saw yesterday with those dew points that surged up into the 70s, doesn't seem like there's enough time for that to happen this time around after a dry day tomorrow. So maybe that is going to hold down. Maybe that's why the severe weather risk areas for Thursday are not nearly anything like they were yesterday. And of course, that lifts out. We get a temporary reprieve on Friday into Saturday, and then there's another strong short wave. This is Sunday night and Monday. I mean, this is not too shabby here for early next week. So that's why I thought maybe that Monday, there's actually a weather front that comes through late on Saturday, but then the one that comes through on Monday, that might have some potential here for some severe weather risk in the eastern part of the United States. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Then after that lifts out, you still have more energy in Canada, but now instead of the upper low dropping southeastward, it moves more to the east-northeast into the Labrador. So that actually allows the jet to pull up north of us later next week. So I would say that there's probably a fair chance that we could see some hot weather maybe later next week. If that's the case. In fact, Joe, there's a little cutoff high that forms over Virginia and North Carolina next Friday. Not a particularly strong one, but it is there. So we're going to be in a bit of a ridge position. So maybe, just maybe, this will be the one that puts a lot of places haven't been able to string 390 degree days in a row. Maybe this one does it. And then after that's over with, we got a trough that comes by next weekend of the 20th and 21st. No, I'm sorry, the weekend of the 19th and 20th. And, then it's just sort of, on the edge of a westerly flow across the northern part of the United States. That's not anything, to write home about, I suppose. But I don't know. We'll see.
But it continues to be progressive. It continues to be a relatively fast flow that weather systems are propagating from west to east across the continent at a relatively good speed, considering that it's now mid to late summer. And we've not seen, kind of a stagnant, the airflow where hardly anything moves for days on end. So.
Right. The only thing is that even though it is progressive, it's kind of slow progressive. These fronts take, the one that came through yesterday still is sitting, cutting across New England. So they move, but they just take longer to do so. The flow is not exactly a fast flow.
You're right. You're right in that regard. But I can remember, again, summers where we had hardly any movement, period, for days on end.
And no wonder you were mentioning before we started the show, you said it was a bit on the windy side. No wonder. There's actually a bit of a gradient around this low that's up in northeastern Massachusetts. A few isobars there, and a couple of Sandy Blue Ocean and Chuck Cardillo on the chat board both commenting on the fact that it kind of felt a bit fallish where they are in upstate New York today.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. I mean, the gradient is relatively tight, and we do have a flow coming down out of Quebec and Ontario with that airflow. It is. It's and as I said before, I lost power briefly several times. These several power hits, like the power goes off, then 5 seconds later it comes back on, then it goes off and it comes back on for 10 seconds, then it goes back off and on and on and on. And I said to Renata, so what's causing this? We don't have any severe storms. But then I looked out the window and I'm seeing the trees out there blowing back and forth, back and forth. I said, my God, this has to be at least a sustained wind of around 20. And who knows, there may be some stronger gusts. So, here up where I am, Joe, we have Uncle Billy's electrical service. Yeah. So that, whenever it blows to a certain degree above 20 miles an hour, we have to be ready that there could be a little, blip in the power supply. So.
Rock Roll says, I can't remember a rainy summer like this in New Hampshire and Vermont. It's been almost the whole summer. Must be close to setting all-time record rains for the summer season. Rock Roll, I would not be surprised if that winds up being the case, because it's been pretty much nonstop for weeks and weeks now up in northern New England. I think it's about the complete opposite of last year, because if I remember correctly, last year the problem was that there wasn't enough rain.
It was bone dry.
It was bone dry.
here. Yeah.
So uh, here's our surface map for the GFS. So this thing's pulling out finally. So the rain should be over with during the early morning hours, other than a leftover shower. A decent day tomorrow. There'll be a breeze from the west. So tomorrow there's a fair amount of sunshine. That should give a nudge to the temperatures, especially along the coast, to get well up into the 80s, I think. And you can see the showers and storms that are coming out of a low moving from southwest Missouri. And you see the thunderstorms there that the GFS is picking up on. And this is where SPC has severe weather risk tomorrow in parts of the middle Mississippi and Ohio and Tennessee Valley. Well, that moves northeastward. Now, it looks like the timing on this is a little earlier than the one for yesterday. So the showers and storms are pretty much on the doorstep of the coast by afternoon, by early afternoon, if the GFS is correct, and they're all but gone by 8 o'clock Friday evening. So maybe this will be the one that brings some. Eastern Long Island has been very dry. Not so much Western Long Island, but Eastern Long Island has been very dry. So this might help the cause a little bit. Of course, it does bring a little bit of rain up to northern New England. Not a lot, but it does bring some. And then that goes away, and then we'll settle with a decent day on Friday. As Joe said, it's the pick of the week. And you can see the showers and storms, by the way, in the southeast, along the Carolinas and back through southern Georgia and Alabama on Friday afternoon and evening, looking a bit on the strongish side. Then that goes away. There's a front that approaches on Saturday. Looks like it comes through sometime Saturday night. And then that goes out. And then we have the stronger system for Monday with showers and storms. For some reason, this run wants to bring the front through and then have some kind of wave on it along the coast. The European is different, and I think maybe Joe makes a little bit more sense. It hangs the front back and brings it through later in the day, and it would look like what could be a shower and thunderstorm / severe weather possibility. I'll bring the European up, and you'll see the European's difference here. Much slower with the front. It's Monday night that the front comes through with a deepening low. It's got a 999 low on the east shore, right over Niagara Falls, by 8 o'clock Monday night. I mean, that's pretty strong for this time of year. Look at the gradient look at the gradient behind it.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, that's impressive for this time of year.
I think that the pattern continues to remain progressive, and as you say, it's a slow progressive. That may very well be, but some of these systems are rather robust for the middle to the latter part of summertime, and you don't expect to see them. And so when they do finally pass, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, we should have a rather breezy westerly wind, which will help to boost temperatures, but also help to keep the dew points at a lower level than what we've seen over the last few days. By the way, the lowering of the dew points tomorrow is only going to last for about a day because, Joe, it looks like we're going to jump right back into, the mid or maybe upper 60s dew point wise as we get into Thursday with that next system coming in with another warm front and a threat of more showery rains.
Yep, and if you look on this is for Monday, here's another reason why maybe there's a possibility of a bullish scenario for severe weather. It's another situation. Look at the upper trough that comes into Minnesota, and all of a sudden you've got an upper low that forms and strengthens as it moves across the Great Lakes and into upstate New York and northern New England. And a lot of times this is a recipe for thunderstorms. For severe thunderstorms in the Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic, and we're not seeing any of the darker streaks here. I'm looking at the 10,000 foot level of the 700 millibar, but there are some jet streaks here that are showing up. So you'll have to pay attention to this when we get closer to it. So we'll come back to this tomorrow and Thursday and see how it plays out. And the Europeans got a little bit of a different view, I think, out to 10 days. Than the GFS. It doesn't quite build the ridge up the way the GFS does, but we'll deal with that we'll deal with that tomorrow and Thursday. Meanwhile, I just want to point out, because I've been waiting for this in terms of at least seeing a sign as far as activity in the tropical Atlantic, and the last several runs of the European, less so the GFS, but the European is picking up, and this will be in about a week. There's a tropical wave that comes off the African coast over the weekend. And you see that low there that's south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands. Doesn't have much shower activity with it around the low. There's showers to the south of the low center, but as you move it along, it starts to develop some showers around it, and it seems to hold its identity as it moves across. And then there's a second wave behind it for later next week. So there are two systems out here that are showing up on the models, which, you know what, given where we are now in the month of August, I can't imagine we're going to go 2 Augusts in a row without seeing a named storm formed during that calendar month.
It would be weird. Now, it would make more sense this year because this year we have an El Nino or building El Nino, and as a result, that suppresses tropical system. Last year, though, we were in the midst of a La Nina, and La Nina meant that we would be seeing accentuated tropical activity. And you just mentioned, Joe, we had hardly anything last year. I don't think we have anything in August of last year.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're following along the same script again this year. But yeah, something has to break.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I agree. And the other thing, the GFS, with this wave that comes off the African coast on Saturday, the GFS rushes it across. It loses the low, but you could sort of follow the green area of showers as it moves over the Windward and Leeward Islands there, and then eventually it does form a low in the southeast Gulf of Mexico sometime around the 19th or the 20th or the 20th or the 21st. It's like way down in the long range. I don't know how real that is. I just, the fact that the European operational model is showing something, I think is, I said yesterday I have it made me raise one eyebrow, and I'm still at the phase of raising just one eyebrow.
Yes.
But we'll see what the models do over the next couple of days. Meanwhile, let's just look real quick at Hurricane Dora.
Frank R. on the chat board, by the way, says, strange that the GFS is showing nothing tropical, as it usually spins everything up to a Category 5.
No, it's true. That's quite true. Well, they threw in the towel with this with regards to trying to get it to weaken. And at 11 a.m. this morning, the center of Dora it is so far south out there. It's at 11.5 north and 158.1 west. Top winds at 130, moving west at 22. They've got it classified as they keep it a major hurricane until Thursday morning, and then they start to weaken it a bit. Crossing the international date line, Joe, sometime during the day on 8 a.m. Friday. Now, I don't know, are they using on these forecast plots, is that Eastern time? I wonder, I think it is.
I think this is I think it's Alaska, Hawaii
Standard.
No,
it's Hawaii Standard Time on the advisory. Is it 8 a.m. Friday Hawaii time?
I believe so.
You know what? It doesn't really matter. Sometime during the day on Friday.
In the lower left corner of the map, you see Hurricane Dora, 11 a.m. Hawaiian Standard Time Advisory 34, and it start on the map.
Okay, so it's Hawaii time then.
Right.
All right. So by 8 a.m. Friday, or sometime around lunchtime on Friday, Dora will be crossing the international date line. So
2 p.m. Eastern, well, not 2 p.m., probably more like, 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. Hawaii is 6 hours behind us right now in terms of time frame.
And it's crossing probably a couple of time zones as it moves along here. So that just adds to the confusion, because then it crosses the date line and suddenly it's Saturday. So there you go. So that 8 a.m. Saturday is at 175 East is actually 8 a.m. Sunday. But 8 a.m. Saturday, Hawaii time or something. You know what? The bottom line is it's crossing the date line. Not that there's anything magical about that, but it doesn't happen too often, so we like to at least call attention to
And
it.
it continues to hold on to the name Dora, but once it crosses the date line, it's no longer Hurricane Dora. It will become Typhoon Dora.
And speaking of that, let's just look at yeah, they got the Hawaii loop. Let's see how far south that goes. No, it doesn't go far enough south. But the clouds are moving. The low clouds are moving at a solid clip there. The East Central Pacific one, I guess that would be the one to look at. So let's see. Yep. So there's Dora. The eye disappears, and then it looks like it might be coming back. And look, you see where the Hawaiian Islands are and how far south this thing is. It still has that, it's maybe a little bit less symmetrical than what it was earlier today, but it still has a formidable appearance there, or formidable appearance, as it chugs along its merry way to the west at 22 miles an hour. Amazing, isn't it?
Well, you could see that, and the way the winds are blowing. Now, the winds at this time of the year in Hawaii, they are the northeast trade winds, and they are indeed coming from the northeast. At least you could tell by the way the movement of the clouds, and that's because of a subtropical high that's located just to the right or to the east of the islands, and they're getting that. And I guess the subtropical high is also just strong enough to suppress Dora, to keep it just to the south. I can only imagine what would have happened to the Hawaiian Islands. We're dealing with 130 mile per hour.
Well, it never would have been. If it were up at the latitude close enough to the Big Island, it would never.
Right, the water's much cool up there.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's actually, they talked in the discussion about the fact that later tomorrow it's going to be moving over waters that are even warmer than what they are now. They're like up at around 29°C, and they wouldn't be. Then they started mentioning that it may weaken a little bit and then get over those waters and strengthen again. So they don't get to see these things too often. So I guess it's very important to have the experience of seeing these storms on a regular basis, because sometimes the rules don't always apply, especially this year.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a Briller Jeopardy, but before we do that, I just want to show everybody I made this new dish today. Okay, and it was so good. I just want to tell you, it was so good and so easy to make. So I've got just some pictures here, and there you go. We're just going to move myself over to the side. So what this is tortellini with shrimp, zucchini, and tomatoes and mushrooms. And so it's really easy. So you take your mushrooms, your zucchini, and your tomatoes, and you put them in a big fry pan with just a little bit of butter, just a little butter and a little olive oil. Not either olive oil or butter. I use both. So I use a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of curry butter. You throw the mushrooms in. You start to let them cook for just a little while, and then you add the zucchini and the tomatoes. And what happens is that the mushrooms, as they cook, they produce a liquid. So all of those, all of those things just cook nicely together. I had bought a package of frozen fresh shrimp that were already clean and cooked, which made life very easy. And then, of course, I boiled a pot of water with the tortellini. Then what you do is you take the mushrooms, the tomatoes, the zucchini, and you toss them into a big bowl. Then you toss the shrimp in, and you don't have to cook. The shrimp are already cooked. You could put them in there cold because the heat of what you've just cooked is going to warm them up. And then you throw the tortellini on top of it. Meanwhile, you leave in the pan as you scoop all that stuff up, you're going to leave all that liquid out. And when you put all this stuff in the bowl, it's going to make some more liquid. You're going to drain that liquid back into the pan and bring it to a boil and add 2 or 3 tablespoons of flour to thicken it up. And then after it boils for a couple of minutes, you take it off the boil, you let it cool, and you've got this nice, relatively thick mushroom and tomato sauce, and you pour it into the big bowl with everything else. You add some Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and you're in heaven. You're in absolute heaven. I was stunned at how I just kind of ad-libbed all of this today, Joe. So I was actually quite stunned at how good it was. It was utterly delicious.
Now, are you going to plan ever to make your own page, not devoted to meteorology, but
food? I got too. I already got enough to do with managing all of this that we do, and then the rest of the stuff that I do. The problem with you got to have somebody else to hold the camera while you cook. It's very hard to hold a phone in your hand and trying to describe what you're doing
or something, or
I suppose I could, but it's a lot of maneuvering. And knowing me, I would go through the whole thing and forget to turn the video on, the recorder on, after it's all done. And then you have to edit it down. I don't have time for that. So, if anybody wants something written down in specifics, just, send me an email and I'll be more than happy to write it down for you.
What you should do is you should get somebody to hold that camera, but also get an audience. You should bring people into your living room or your kitchen so they can applaud every time you.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Take a look at this. Yeah. Or people go ooh and ah, like with Emily or whatever.
Yeah, or Julia Child. If you notice on I don't know if one of those pictures is a big bottle of Merlot. And I always used to think that with Julia Child, whenever you watch her, she would always have 2 bottles of wine, one to marinate the food with, and the other one for you to drink, completely.
Yes.
While you waited for the marinade to work. All right, we've got Briller Jeopardy tonight.
Before we get to Briller Jeopardy, I do want to show one thing. Could you allow me to share something with everybody?
Yeah, of course. Just give me a moment here.
This is an auspicious anniversary for me.
Yeah, especially with those clothes you were wearing.
Oh, you know what I'm going to show, right?
Yeah,
right?
Of course I know what you're going to show. Hold on. I think you should be good to go. Yeah, you're good to go.
All right. So 35 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, 35 years ago, I was...
Joe, I'm sorry. Unshare it again. Unshare it first. I did something wrong this time. Okay. Hang on a second. Yeah, I lost you. That's why. So just give me a moment here. Okay, now you're back. All right, now go ahead and share it.
35 years ago, I was a stringer for News 12 Long Island, and Mr. Cioffi was the morning meteorologist Monday through Friday there. And on weekends, they had a gentleman by the name of Norm DeVoskin, whose main claim to fame was not so much in terms of being a weather forecaster, but being able to include in his forecasts some of the worst puns you've ever seen or heard in your life.
And you've been following up in that tradition lately, I've noticed, but go on.
Yes. Well, anyway, one weekend in 1988, August 8th, 1988, Norm wanted to take a day off. And Joe said to the powers that be, well, I don't want to work on a Sunday. And the guy who worked there in the evening said, I don't want to work on a Sunday either. And so they didn't have anybody to work for Norm. And Norm certainly deserved a day off. And I started raising my hand and jumping up and down and saying, hey, guess what? I'll do it. I want to be on TV. And so they said, okay. And so that evening, look who was doing the weather. And this is 35 years ago. Get a load of that sweater vest that I'm wearing.
Yeah, I got a load of it.
And yes, folks, I was not born with white or gray hair. I did have darker hair. The hair started to really go gray or white after I had kids in the early 90s. But this is 1988, 35 years ago, and here I am standing in front of the U.S. satellite picture doing my thing on News 12 Long Island. And I filled in, Joe, at News 12 Long Island for 7 years. From 1988 to October of 95, I did over 300 fill-ins for you, for the guy in the evening, for Norm, and it eventually, when they opened up News 12 Westchester Hudson Valley, I went to the guy in charge. His name was Pat Dolan. I said, hey, I filled in enough times for you in Long Island. I said, don't you think I deserve a full-time position at Westchester? And he said, yeah, well, that's how he used to talk.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll talk to Janine Rose.
Just so you know, he watches the show almost continuously, just like
really? Okay.
Just like the people at the Storm Prediction Centers.
What can he do to me now? What can he do to you, Joe? What can he do to me? Anyway, he gave.
Well,
actually, I that's not true. That's not true because, at that time in 1985. Okay, so 7 years later, in 95, he was the head of the News 12 network. But in 88, the news director at News 12 Long Island was Norm Fine. And it was Norm who looked at me and said, okay, you can come on and fill in for Norm DeVoskin. Anyway, there I am. Have I changed much in 35 years, Joe?
No.
Don't say anything, Joe.
Oh, Joe, I've known you for those 35 years. I've actually known you for 35 plus 6 or 7 more. So
yes.
We've all aged, but we've aged so beautifully.
If you want to call
we
that
really
beautiful.
have. Well, I know. I mean, I have fantastic bone structure. My entire body hangs off my cheekbones. I have my grandmother's cheekbones. When she died at the age of 90, and she was laying there flat, she had no wrinkles on her skin at all. She looked like she was 50.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen to me. Where'd those 35 years go?
I don't know. I have no idea.
No, I don't have any idea either.
I would have a much better chance. I'd have a much better chance of getting a job in television, though, 35 years ago, as opposed to right now.
No, you're not getting one now.
No, I'm not.
You're booked anyway, so you're not getting one now.
Yes.
We should mention that one of our regulars, Scott Briller, he doesn't spend a whole lot of time on the show, on the chat board these days, because he's been taking care of his mom, and Mother Briller, unfortunately, took a fall and is in Center State Hospital in Freehold. However, no broken bones, MRI clear. She's got a little touch of a UTI, but we are going to wish her the speediest of speedy recoveries, and all our best to Scott and Mother Briller. So I don't have a Briller Jeopardy, but I just wanted to pass that information along to everybody.
Okay, well, that's good.
All right, so let's wrap it up here. And as we all know, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you every night by our affiliate Tempest by WeatherFlow. You can get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned at the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you make any purchase, whether it's this or anything else from the Tempest WeatherFlow website, use the coupon code I want a weather station. And Joe Rayo, what do they get for that?
10% off.
And Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the phone number there. They're at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. They have the best prices in town, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
All right, folks, so we'll see you tomorrow night at the usual shopping time, which is 7:35 p.m. Eastern. Good night.
Good night, folks.